Welcome to the Live Better, Sell Better podcast with your host, Kevin Dorsey of Inside Sales Excellence, the #1 Patreon group and YouTube channel for tech sellers and tech sales leaders, where we dive in deep for tactical advice on how to book more meetings, close more deals faster, and lead sales teams to success. But we don't stop there. We also focus on the person in salesperson. We talk about mindset, goals, time management, and so much more. So thank you for listening. And if you're interested, head on over to patreon.com/inside sales excellence. Now with that, grab a notepad, get ready, and let's dive into the good stuff. What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Live Better, Sell Better podcast. This is your host, Kevin Dorsey, aka KD. And I am so excited for the topic today because it is something that is not only near and dear to my heart as a sales leader, but it's actually one of the places I think most companies get things wrong, which is how to onboard their salespeople. For whatever reason, in the sales industry, we have this weird idea of sink or swim, right? Figure it out, throw them to the wolves, throw them to the deep end. And I think we forget that people die in those situations. That's not how it should be done. And no other career operates this way besides sales. And that is why I'm so excited to have Hana Elliot on the show today. She's the VP of sales over at Vendition, but she's going to be diving into how to onboard your people the right way, because how you start is how you finish. That's my belief. Hana, welcome to the show.
KD, thank you so much. Glad to see ya.
Right? This is a long time coming. I don't know why it took this long for this to happen, but here we are. We did it. So, all right. Well, we're going to dive right into this because I want to make sure we cover as much as possible, right? So why was this the topic? Like when I asked like what you want to talk about, and it's SDR onboarding, sales reps onboarding. Why is this a topic so near and dear to your heart?
Well, the easiest answer to that is because it's what Vendition does, right? So I'm thinking about it 24/7, seeing thousands of SDRs go through it every year. But I think, the next level to my response is what you just said. It's that a lot of people get it wrong and they don't mean to. Everyone's heart is in the right place. Everyone wants their team to win. It's just a lot harder, I think, than most of us give it credit for.
Sorry, my dog's about to go nuts in the background. I'm trying to keep him quiet, but he's got to keep me safe. So let's talk about this, right? So where do you think a lot of companies go wrong? Like, I don't know if I fully agree that I think all their hearts are in the right place, but maybe that's a different conversation. But where do you see a lot of companies go wrong with their onboarding? And then we can flip the script into like, what are the things that they should be doing?
Man, I think it's really simple. I think it's not setting aside the time to do it right. Especially with SDRs, you have to remember that a lot of these folks are entry level. They're coming straight out of college, straight out of high school, straight out of a technical career. Maybe they're a total career switcher who just hasn't had the experience of working in a sales environment before. And especially, I think it applies across the board, but especially in remote environments, they don't have that benefit of being able to look over at the next desk and see, oh, Katie's doing it this way. That's what I should do, right? Like, they just don't have that opportunity to learn that you and I had coming up, right? And so I think the answer is super simple. It's just the intentionality of setting aside the time to be there every day, twice a day, quick responses, while someone's in that very critical first 90 days. And I can't blame people either, because while you're onboarding a new SDR, you're also held accountable to a number. You're also trying to manage your existing team and trying to be there for them as well. You've got so many other things going on. I can't blame people who aren't able to set aside the time that's needed, but that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. So let's touch on that then. They're busy. I don't think that's an excuse. So what should they do? All right, I'm busy, but you're also responsible for these people. So what should they be doing to either get it done or to free up time to make sure that their people are getting onboarded the right way? Because it's one of those chicken or the egg things. Like, I'm so busy that I can't onboard my people. But if I'm not onboarding my people, they're not going to succeed, which is only going to make me more stressed and more busy. And it's that never ending. So, like, what could they do to free up time or to make it work if they are strapped?
First of all, I think it's a worthwhile exercise to look at the pipeline or revenue impact of not having a fully ramped SDR in seat, because that's what's going to help you prioritize your time. Mm-hmm. It's too easy to get caught up in the daily whirlwind, to your point, and say, I'm too busy. I just don't have time to do it. I have all these other things I'm doing. But once you see the financial impact of not having an SDR in seat, that's part of your forecast, that's part of your model, that's part of your, revenue delivery for the rest of the year, then it makes it a lot easier to prioritize because it's very, very significant, I think most of us will find. So I think that's the first thing I would do. And then the second thing I would do too is, again, it's simple. It's before you even start hiring, make sure you have your first 90 days laid out. Go ahead and block your calendar for the first 90 days. Don't let other things creep up and take priority. And I say this because I've seen it, but I know how hard it is because I don't get it right all the time either. I'm onboarding people right now onto my team and I don't get it right all the time. It's really hard to do, but it helps have it, before the whole thing's even started, blocking your calendar, going ahead and setting up mentor relationships, going ahead and setting up buddy relationships, because when it comes down to it, the whirlwind's going to take over.
Absolutely. Something that rolled out actually when I was at Service Tech, because I was in a very similar situation where I had a team of 20 and grew it to almost 100 people in a year. And I was like, how on earth do I onboard this many people, right? I didn't have an enablement team at the time, was still ramping that up. So we implemented something called tribal training, where the first 60 to 90 days were fully mapped, but individuals on the team were responsible for different activities. And so we were able to scale out like a heavy onboarding program, but everyone was only responsible for an hour-ish per week to make it run. And it really helped us scale things out. And it touched on one of the things that you were mentioning, but I never figured this out really well remotely. And so I'm curious if you have some thoughts on this, because it helped with the culture, right? I'm learning from my peers. It helped with connection. I'm hearing it from people in my role, but that on the floor hearing things, that on the floor coaching, right? Where in the office you had disappeared remotely. Have you seen things to help bridge that? Have you done things or seen things best practice of how do you recreate that a little bit? And I'll share this point and then pass the mic over. Ramp time was the only metric I could not get back to its original form. Ramp time was the only metric once it moved fully remote I could not get back to its original form. And that was with all the things and all the tactics and all the things. I could never get it back there. And I think this was part of it. What have you seen around that kind of on the floor learning remotely?
There are a couple, I'll be honest, I personally haven't cracked the code either, but here are some things that we know and have seen worked. Again, we're working with thousands of SDRs a year. We're working with hundreds of employers and hiring managers a year. Here are some things that we do know work. So I love that tribal learning that you mentioned. That matters, right? And ideally, your SDR is on the floor listening to, all the calls going on around them. And then same thing, you as the manager are, walking the floor, hearing the conversations, able to drop in feedback on the fly. But when you're in a remote environment and it has to be one-to-one and it has to be intentional and scheduled, that gets a lot harder because you just don't simply have the time. So of course, a conversation intelligence software, call recording software is important for that. Gong, Chorus, Exec Vision, whoever. when it comes to delivering feedback as a manager. And then when it also comes to SDRs listening to how other people are doing it, but you do lose the element of being able to shadow on the fly. And so that's another place where, looping back to what I was originally saying, that's another place where I think the rest of your team can play in, is having more experienced AEs or some of your senior SDRs who have done it and are showing great results, have them listen in and shadow and give their feedback. Chances are if you've been coaching them all along, they'll also know your mentality and be able to pass that along and re-emphasize. And honestly, like sometimes it helps to hear it from somebody else, not just your direct manager, right? Like that's how it is drilled into your brain, is when you hear it on repeat, is when you hear it from multiple sources. And so, kind of along with that, I'd say, and I mentioned this really kind of in passing earlier, but I'd say making sure that your new SDRs have a buddy on the team, which is not only great for shadowing, feedback, coaching, etc., but just when it comes to human connection, right? And having someone that they know they can go to, whether it's like a personal thing or a work thing, that's not you, I think is important. And then I think similarly and additionally, it's not either or, I think you need both, is making sure that they have a mentor, again, who isn't you. My first job out of college was teaching swim lessons. And actually I did it through high school and college, but I'm maybe minimizing it. I ran the aquatics program at a local facility.
There you go. Say it all. Yeah. I taught swim lessons.
Yeah. But creating the, curriculum and teaching them was definitely part of it. And we always said, parents, you can be here, but we don't want you to be the ones teaching the lessons, because your kid is maybe going to act out in front of you. Your kid is maybe like too attached to you and they don't want you to see them fail. So we're the unbiased third party that's going to teach them how to swim, because you need that support. We're helping you teach your kid how to swim. And so having that like unbiased third party, I think, is also really important. And, one cool thing about being a sales leader is we're all super active on, many of us are super active on LinkedIn and in our networks and connections. Like those are your people that you can ask to help mentor, to check in once in a while on your reps who may be too scared to say something to you, no matter how trusting your relationship is, who can look for red flags that maybe you're not able to see. Sorry, I went a little off topic. I got up on my high
You were
horse
on
about
all the
it.
topics. What are you talking about, right? It was there. You're just connecting dots from different industries, which I think is important, because if sales looked at literally any other industry, swimming lessons, nursing, like whatever, like the amount of practice and structure that they get to learn a skill is immense. And then in sales, we do the opposite. So I actually love the correlation of like running an aquatics center, right? Teaches you how to build out training, how to deal with difficult people, AKA parents, how to deal with different skill sets, because they're all different, right? Put me in the slow lane for sure. You got differing, varying experiences there. But like, I think it's important, because I wish people in sales thought about onboarding the same way they thought about other skills they've built. You would never, ever throw someone into the pool and then expect them to win a race in 3 weeks.
Right.
And that's how we train a lot of our people. So like, let's talk about the elements of a good onboarding program, because you've talked about, okay, like the first 90 days, block the time, right? But what are the things that a good onboarding program should have over those 90 days to get the most impact? Because there's plenty of people listening right now that go, oh yeah, we have a 90-day onboarding program. They learn the product the first week, and then they have a mentor meeting the third week, and then, we check in on them. That doesn't pass it. What should a great onboarding program have, include, or be done?
Great question. I'm just trying to think of like how to concisely respond, which, as you've seen, I'm not great at the concise responses.
So give me the first one. First thing that popped in your head when I said, what does a great onboarding program need? What's the first thing that pops in your head?
Man, first thing is remember again that the majority of SDRs are entry level. They may not have been in a sales role, a tech role, a business world. They don't have the person next to them to learn from. So start from the very beginning. Be aware of the jargon that you're using. Be aware of the language that you're using. Start before you ask them to get on any kind of phone call. Just make sure that they understand their surroundings. They understand what your tools are and what they're used for and how to use them. They understand deeply who your personas are, and not just what a persona is, but like actually who yours are. Make sure that there's some element of tying them into the company culture too, right? That can't be underestimated. Again, particularly in a remote environment where you can't just see it, you have to live it and feel it, and be extra intentional and go the extra mile to make sure people understand like what your company is all about. If they haven't been in this kind of work environment before, they don't know the cues to look out for. And the other thing I think and hope is kind of a duh thing, but is making sure that you're abundantly clear on expectations, from metrics through activity, through professional behavior, meeting etiquette, Slack etiquette, email etiquette. Again, those are things I think that sometimes get over. What I think most people do have is month one, here's the number of meetings you set. Month two, here's the number. Month three, here's the number. But I don't think we're supporting our SDRs enough in like how to get to that number with those other expectations. Like, this is what your month one is going to look like. This is when you need to be at every single meeting on time or early. This is how you respond to someone who helped you out. This is how quickly I expect responses on Slack. All those little things that add up to not only making sure someone really understands their job, but they understand the company and they understand what your definition of a successful employee is, because it isn't always just about the number, right? Obviously, that's an enormous part of it.
1,000%, right? And that's where I do think people forget, especially with SDRs. Like, for a lot of them, this may even be their first job. And so, like, teaching them how to be a professional, right? Like, what professional communication sounds like, what it means to have a full-time job, right? Like, you have to teach all of that. And I think that's where a lot of people miss, is they forget all the things that they need to know in order to succeed. Like, it's overwhelming the amount of, if anyone listening, if any of y'all sat down for just a second and wrote down all the things a rep on your team needs to know in order to succeed, you would change your onboarding tomorrow. Because if you're not teaching it, and then also the next point I want to get into here, which is practice, right? If you're not teaching it and you're not practicing with them, how are they supposed to learn it? Like, no wonder it takes 5-6 months to ramp them up, because it takes 5-6 months to learn these things if it's just happening through the grapevine or randomly versus being intentional. So where does
I think too, it's, again, it's hard when you're in the whirlwind to do this, but man, really think deeply about it too, right? And because I think there's so many things baked in there, response times on Slack, that we take for granted maybe. But just keeping in mind that that a lot of them are entry level, and that it's not just teaching somebody how to pick up a phone and call.
Yeah. Well, even then, I think it's hilarious how little training they actually get on how to do that. Like, then that's where I want to go in this next one, which is practice, right? Because same idea. Right? Did you do an instrument or sport, swimming? Like, what was your sport or like hobby growing up?
Yeah, I grew up swimming competitively. I practiced from 5:30 to 7:30 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. and Saturday mornings we had a special 3-hour practice.
Right. Oh, see, you took it where I wanted to go without even having to ask the question. Y'all, rewind this episode and go ahead and listen to that again real quick. How many hours per week she was practicing her sport, right? But then we get into sales, the thing that actually makes us multiple 6 figures per year, and we don't practice at all, right? So where should practice show up in the onboarding program? Because I do not believe in putting someone on the phone to learn. I don't think that's where you learn. That's me getting thrown in the pool with you to race. Like, I conceptually know how to swim and I'm kind of okay at it, but you've been practicing for years. I've never practiced. So where does practice come into the onboarding program to help them actually learn the skill?
Every day. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm not a, second week throw somebody on the phone. That's not my approach or preference. But you have to hit it hard at the beginning. That's where you can take advantage of your mentors, of your buddies. That's where you can do a lot of like group online at the same time, cohort writing workshops. But I'm with you. And, one other thing too that we've been playing with is, and it'll depend for every single company what your channels are and where you work that way. But one thing I've seen too is like, so first, you've covered your basics, your fundamentals. They know what sales is. They know what your tech is. They know what your business does. You move on to the practice, a lot of role playing, a lot of recording themselves and you listening and coaching, a lot of buddy sessions, a lot of them listening to other calls. And then once you start to move into like actually practicing, one thing that we've been playing with too is starting in while you're continuing to practice the like high adrenaline things like cold calls. Those are scary for so many people. But while you're still practicing that, going ahead and getting your actual real world experience in on the slower response things where you can, I send an email, I get a response. I have time then to ask for help on it and to work on it then. And so like starting to build in your slower response, probably like lower adrenaline, fewer oh shit moment channels, and then like kind of amp it up from there, that lets people just get comfortable with what they're doing. It's, there's of course an element of like pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone that is part of sales. But let's make sure we support people to get there.
Yeah. And what's your thought on ramping quotas? So like, because sometimes people's like, hey, your quota is 10 every month and you ramp up to it. Or month 1, it's 1, month 2, it's 3, month 3, it's 9, and then month 4. Like, how do you think about ramping quotas during the onboarding process?
Great question. I think especially that first month where there's so much learning and being a sponge involved, as you're creating your quota for that month, keep that in mind that they may not even get on a phone for 2 weeks. They might not even be on all of their channels full cylinders for a full month. And I know that's a tough pill to swallow because we all want to see pipeline fast, but you also want people to be successful. Mm-hmm. The other thing I might consider too when creating ramp quotas is, looking at your existing sequences and seeing at what touch point on what day do you normally start to see responses and meetings. Because one mistake that I've seen before multiple times is the second you start expecting meetings on day one, while they're cold calling, while they sent their emails, while they drop people into sequence, so this week we should have responses. But, if you have a longer, if most people are hitting on step 8 in your sequence and that happens week 2, you need to adjust your ramp quotas for that. So I'm not sure I totally answered your question, but those are 2 things that I would consider when I'm setting up, especially those early indicators. The other thing I think about too is it's different if you have been prospecting every day and you have this mass of contacts that are currently at some phase in sequence, then it becomes a little more predictable. But just do the math on, if I start day 1 and I drop in 20 contacts, how many of those realistically are going to turn into a meeting? Day 2, I have 40. How many are realistically going to turn into a meeting? You can't just expect the full, the full thing right away.
Yeah. No.
How do you look at quota, Katie?
So, similarly, I have 0 quota in month 1. 0. Absolutely 0. My month 2 quotas for my SDRs are laughably easy. Laughably. 1 or 2, depending on the role that they're in, because I want them to feel overachievement. I want them to believe they can get to their number and get past it. I don't care what they produce in their first 60 days. To your earlier point, I care about what they do when they are ramped. That's what I care about. Them getting 1 meeting or 3 meetings does not change my org at all in their first month or 2. But by month 3 to 4, I want them at their full ramp. So I actually slow down to speed up. Month 1, literally 0. I don't even expect you to set a meeting. To your point, you may not have made enough calls yet. You don't even have enough leads in there yet. You haven't even sent out enough emails. Month 2, I want them firmly believing they can get to that number and exceed it. Go get 1. Go get 1 or go get 2. And that was it, while building up. So the vast majority of them would overperform in month 2, which builds confidence going into month 3 when it ramps up a little bit more. And then by month 4, you're fully ramped and good to go. So that's how I did my ramping quotas for SDRs.
I think that what you're saying about building confidence is critical and often overlooked because we are so focused on just the number. But early wins help, A, you're building confidence. B, you're getting buy-in for yourself as a leader and for your company. People like to win. They're happy and motivated when they win. When you start to see slowdowns, no matter how experienced you are, that's when you have motivation problems. That's when you have turnover problems. That's when people start doubting themselves, potentially you, because you're not able to lead them through it. And so I think those early wins are critical. I love that. Thanks for sharing.
You have to. You just have to, right? To set someone up and have them miss quota their first month on the job is a recipe for disaster. Absolutely. They're going to fail. They already are doubting themselves. That's how you get rid of that, new kid enthusiasm, is have them miss their quota in day 60. And then we wonder why they're already in their head, right? So it's setting them up. But also, I slowed my people down. You weren't even making a call generally until month or week 4. Weren't even making a call. You were practicing daily. You were getting hundreds of repetitions in before that first call, right? I knew when someone was ready when they were frustrated they weren't on the phone yet. That's what I'm looking for. Is I want them chomping at the bit. Hey, I'm ready. No, you're not. Put me on the phones. No, not yet. I can do it. No, let's try. That I'm building up that confidence to then unleash them. I don't care what they do in their first 2 weeks. That makes 0 difference to me at all. I would rather someone practice for an entire month straight and then get on the phone than put someone on the phone after a week. And I know people have differing views on that, but I'd put mine up against that any day. Someone's on the phone in 1 week with a 1 week of training. My person's on the phone in 4 weeks, but have been practicing for a month. Let's see what happens in month 2 and 3. I would put that up against any of those other processes.
Yeah. And, I think one other thing that's potentially a helpful tool to build into that, because being ready is so subjective, but, are there assessments that you can build in at checkpoints and milestones throughout their onboarding process to determine, are they actually ready? And, what are make sure you know what you're looking for. Can they do X, Y, and Z on a cold call practice with you?
Exactly.
You
If
know,
they can't do it in practice, they can't do it in the game. Like the benchmarks are actually very clear. If you can't pass a role play with your peer, with your mentor, self-recorded, or with your manager, I know once you get a prospect on, you're not. So it's
yeah, you're
actually
going to
very
freeze.
easy.
Yeah.
It was so easy to know if they were ready or not. Is because if you can't do it in practice, you're not going to pull it off in the game. And so as we wrap up here on this, right? Like, because the name of this podcast is Live Better, Sell Better. Because I have this weird idea, right? That like, if we took better care of ourselves, if we had more joy, more energy, more fulfillment, that maybe the sales would go up too. What would your live better advice be for people listening?
Um, Gosh, I've been thinking about it a lot this week in particular. Um, we've had such tragic events happening in the world around us. My my advice for managers is to take time to remember that your people are human. Um, Man, especially in remote environments too, people are going through stuff right now. We had a kind of open optional session yesterday, where we invited team members who just wanted a space to connect with others. And I learned things about what they were going through that I never expected. We had someone who grew up very close to a previous school shooting. And so he was going through some stuff. I have a former teacher whose mom is a principal of an elementary school. She's going through some stuff and worried about her mom. Not to mention, of course, like all the care that people have just for everyone who's been directly affected. But yeah, man, I think that's my biggest thing is like, for the managers who are listening, your numbers are important, but they're not everything. And your team are people first. And they're not going to win if they're not able to be their full, whole selves at work.
No, I agree with that 1,000%. Not only from the personal things I'm feeling from it, I actually shared that with my post today. I was going on stage for a speaking event. 5 minutes before walking on stage, get the notification on the phone of what had happened, and all it said was a school in Texas. That's all it said. I'm in Texas. My daughters are at school in Texas when that came through. And it was just like I had to research and find out where it was and what was happening. It's just awful. And so I think checking in on our people, and what I want to call out that you did there very well too, is like check in with intention. Not just how are you doing? Like create the safe space, create like this. We know shit's going on right now. Like let's talk about it. Like in creating that environment, to feel safe and heard is really, really important. So no, I think that's a great way to end on this, because it is like onboarding, management, leadership. It's about our people, and remembering what they need and what they're going for is really important. Like, where can people get more of you, Hana? Where are you putting out info? Where can they learn more about you and your company that do like onboarding or like ramp people up the right way? Where can they learn more about what you got going on right
now? Love that question. Y'all connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to meet new folks. Passing through Nashville, shoot me a note. I'll show you the good honky tonks. And then, please check out Vendition. If you're building your SDR teams, we can help you build a diverse, productive, ramped SDR team. And we're here because we want to help people launch lucrative successful careers in tech sales, because all of us have experienced how cool of an industry it is to be in. More people deserve to have that opportunity. And so that's what we're going for. And it's awesome.
Yeah, no. And especially if you're listening going, I don't have time to ramp up my SDRs. Then
let me help
them. Like, because you're doing yourself and them a disservice by not. Like, let somebody help you. So, Hana, this was phenomenal. Thank you so much for your time, energy, and insights today. I really appreciate it.
Great to see you. Love talking about this stuff. So really appreciate the conversation.
Oh, yeah.